Well, it's Friday afternoon again, and I promised last time I would talk about protector animals. Uh, I'm really happy to do that because I find the subject really quite touching, and I have a wonderful wife. So this gives me a way to give some homage to my wife and to talk about how much she's been an influence on me and how much she's been a good companion to me. She did spend well, she's in practice too. We are in practice in the same little building together, and we often talk about cases together. But for about 15 years, she was in an agency. She was the director of the Children's Day Treatment Program at Cedar Sinai Hospital. She managed to put together a program for disturbed kids and to turn the program into a recognized school. It was part of the LAUS school district, and she was accredited as an elementary school and as a therapeutic center. And it was wonderful. She had teaching candidates coming to work in the school. She had psychology interns coming. She had social work interns coming, and she had tutors that she trained there too. And so she had a mix of various kinds of professionals and paraprofessionals, and she worked very hard for all those years to service the needs in West Los Angeles. Most of them were very strange and very quirky children she had there all day. Ordinary children made their way in the school system with if they had minor quirks or difficulties, but these were kids who couldn't make it in regular public school, but she somehow managed to give them therapy and to teach them at the same time. And I stood in awe of her. In return for that, she got a lousy salary and she got caught up in horrible bureaucratic politics that are almost in every institution of human beings. And after a while, she decided she liked the privilege and the honor of what she was doing and the title of being director of this prestigious program, but she didn't like the quality of life anymore. And she decided to devote herself to full-time practice and surrender all of it. So back she came into being with me full time, and I was delighted. I learned about protective animals from her. She had a child who was having terrible night dreams, and she came up with this intervention somehow. She cooked it up herself. She just listened to her own intuition and her own internal yearnings and craziness and came up with this that I'm about to describe to you. But I'm going to take a detour because I guess one of the reasons this meant so much to me was when I was small, starting at around age 3, I had terrible nightmares and night phobias and day phobias too. And I never had a good night's sleep. I often woke up in a panic and I was sweating, and my parents didn't like to be bothered. I would just tough it out. I would lie there in bed sweating with my heart pounding until daylight came. And then I don't know if I got a good night's sleep much for about 2 years during that period of time. And here she is telling me what she had invented, and I found myself and I still am yearning, I found myself yearning that this could have been done for me back then. But children were to be seen and not heard, and I had to learn not to be spoiled and bother adult sleep in the night, and I had to learn to soothe myself, but nobody ever taught me anything about how to soothe myself. Boy, I'm now on a strange road. Part of what I will reveal is I used to rock myself to sleep. I couldn't fall asleep without rocking myself, and that went on until I was 12 years old. I was ashamed to go to sleepovers anywhere because I had to rock, and I felt like an overgrown infant. What am I doing? I'm a grown young man, and I'm rocking myself to sleep. I was guilty, disgusted with myself, and nobody took care of me like my wife knew how to take care of children. So here is the intervention. This is to be used. Oh, I forgot to say what had got me off on the wrong foot in bed. Well, it was being left alone too much, too often in bed when I needed to be soothed with nobody coming to soothe me. But on top of that, when I was 3 years old, Anna, the woman who came to be our housekeeper and my emotional protector. She saved me from my emotional life because I knew she cared about me, and she gave me about as much time as she could with her busy schedule. We had a free weekend. My parents had gone away for the weekend. My sisters were out staying with other families. So we went out for a great dinner, and she let me drink some beer. I was 3 years old. I loved drinking the beer. And she gave me lobster to eat. I had never had lobster before. And then we went uphill to movies. Wonderful. But what did we saw Frankenstein. And that really did me in. That movie terrified the hell out of me. And that night I couldn't sleep, and onward, I couldn't sleep. I saw the images from the movie. I saw the body parts being put together. I saw him murdering a little girl. It just was just, I saw them chasing him with fire and trying to burn him up. All of that was just hideous. It was hideous. So it's very useful for children like I was to have the following thing that my wife invented. When she hears about a child, she's still doing this in her private practice. When she hears about a child who's having trouble sleeping, she asks the child, "Do you have a protector animal?" Now, what the fuck is a protector animal? The child never has a protector animal because nobody's ever used the term or even described what a protector animal is. So they said, what's a protector animal? And she said, "Do you have an animal there that will keep you safe during the night so you don't have to be frightened?" Huh? How do I get an animal that's going to keep me safe during the night so I don't have to be frightened? And she said, "Well, let's work on that. It's possible. I can help. I'm a magic lady. I can make this happen. So let's start. Let me bring your mother in." And she brings the mother in from the where the woman's been waiting in the waiting room. And she says, "Your child is having a lot of trouble in the night. I guess has very disturbed nights sometimes. I assume your child wakes you up sometimes even. And I'm going to try and help her have a better night's sleep. She needs a protector animal." And the mother says, "Well, I'll be glad to. What's a protector animal? I go to the pound. What do I do to get a protector animal?" My wife said, "No, no, no. This is not a live animal. This is a stuffed animal. And I can't even tell you what kind of stuffed animal it should be. I can only tell you one thing. Let me see. Yeah, not yet. I have something to read to you. I can only tell you one thing. There is a characteristic the animal has. It could be small in stature. It could be one of these big, huggable animals that's almost as big as a human being. That doesn't matter. What matters is it has to have very large eyes because during the night it has to see everything, and its eyes are not eyes that could possibly be closed. It has to keep its eyes open all night. Now, I want you to go with your child. Used to go to Toys R Us there, but I guess they're out of business completely. I suppose you would go browsing on the internet to try and get a protector animal now. And let your child keep looking. Uh, she's here now. I'm telling her, please, you have to find the protector animal. It has to feel right for you. You have to look at the animal has to have those characteristics. It has very large eyes that won't close. And you have to feel like it looks a little fierce, maybe, or it looks strong. It certainly has to look sturdy. Something magic will happen. When you see the right animal, you'll just know that's the right protector animal. So it may take you an hour or two. You may have to keep browsing and looking and trying things on, but eventually you'll make a choice. And I know if you look a lot, the choice will be the right choice. So that's what you tell the mother too. And say, between now and your next session, I want you to do the work and find the protector animal. Then I have to do the magic training. So you get the protector animal and bring the protector animal to your next session. So that's what happens. And then as best as possible, I wrote this down so I would have a unified, standardized way of doing this in the future. And so the protector animal is brought in, and the kid says, here's the protector animal. And then the script starts. Now you have to say, is your protector animal a boy or a girl? And the child probably hasn't thought of that. So you say, well, if you haven't thought about it, take a look. What do you think? Is this a boy animal or girl animal? And so the child will pick, and then you say, all right, have you given the animal a name yet? No, probably not. All right, we know it's a boy. Give it a name that you think would be a suitable name for an animal that's male. So they pick a name. I have here, what is the name? And if you haven't picked one yet, let's do that now. I can't teach your protector what I have to teach unless I can talk to your animal using the right name. So the name is picked. It's Bruce. I don't know what it is. And then you say, all right, hand me Bruce. And you take Bruce and you say, I'm pleased to meet you, Bruce. I'm the magic animal trainer. And we're going to work together to help Heidi to be able to sleep peacefully at night. Nights are very scary for her. Slight noises will wake her. Shadows on her bedroom walls will frighten her. Bad dreams can startle her up out of her sleep. She has other animals with her already in her bedroom, but one of them, sadly, is a good protector animal. You are now going to take over. You will watch over her, keep her safe every night, and give her comfort if she ever needs it. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. And then you pick the animal up and bring it close to your mouth. And in a stage whisper, so the child can hear, you start the teaching. And here's the teaching. I think Heidi picked you very wisely. You have wonderful big eyes. The first thing to know is that you are not allowed to sleep at night when Heidi is trying to sleep. Your big, big eyes must stay wide open. You must watch everything. You must see everything. And most of all, you must keep checking on her to make sure she is safe and she is having a peaceful night. I know that's going to be hard work for you. You may get sleepy, but you're not allowed to sleep. I will tell Heidi to be sure to let you have some sleep during the day when she is up and busy or when she is at school. I do not know where Heidi is going to place you when she goes to bed at night. It may be in bed with her. It may be on a dresser or shelf where you can be up above her and able to look down and see everything all night. You and she will work that out when you go home tonight, where she's going to place you. Now, here is what you must do. If you see danger and she is awake and not noticing, you must fall down from where you are so that she will become alert and know that there is trouble. You'll have to figure out how to roll off the bed or fall off the shelf and go kerplunk. I will tell her to pick you up and run out of the bedroom to find a grown up who will take over from you. If she is asleep, though, and the danger is coming, or if she's having a bad dream, notice how she is breathing. See the breath coming out of her nostrils. Turn your attention to her left nostril. That is the magic pathway into her dream. Your spirit will slide upward through that left nostril and you will enter her bad dream. If you can, stop the trouble that's going on in the dream and bothering her. If you cannot stop the trouble, whisper to her in her dream to wake up. And as she wakes up, tell her to find the nearest adult. Those are my first instructions to you. You and she can start the work you will be doing. But some things may have to be adjusted before you can help her to the fullest. So I want you to come back in 2 weeks so we can review how well you're settling into your job and make some adjustments if necessary. And by the way, you may be able to help Heidi in another way too. If there's a time when she feels troubled about going to school, it would be a good thing if she could take you with her so she could feel more safe at school. I'm sure you'll be able to help there too. Now it's time Before we leave today, I'm going to blow my breath softly all over you. My breath will contain protector magic. You will feel strong and you will be able to protect well. So those are the instructions for the protector animal. And then you do exactly what's here. 2 weeks later, the child brings the protector animal back, and if there's been trouble in the night or fears or difficulties, you try to adjust what the instructions are to the protector animal so that that gets taken care of. And hopefully, what you've done is create what the psychoanalysts call a transition object. And instead of the parent having to hug and be there all the time, this is a magic animal that will do the same thing and help the child to be separate from the parent and not to have to run all the time for comfort from the parent, but help the transition into self-soothing by using magic to do that. So that's the theory of what's going on, and it can be very, very powerful. Now, the thing that has been most touching for me is that I was talking in a session to a young client. What's today? Today is Friday. On Monday, and she had her session. She's 24 years old. She's been giving me trouble. Uh, while she was going to school, she had to be up at a certain time, and she was doing her online undergraduate classes from the university. But she graduated this summer, and she's doing some part-time work in a restaurant, but the schedule is not the same, and the restaurant work is in the evening, so she has no particular need to get up early in the morning. My session with her typically is around noon. I let her sleep in like teenagers like sleeping in, but for the last 6, 8 weeks, uh, she hasn't even been up at noon. She set an alarm. She hasn't heard it. She slept through. She's missed her appointments. And I was talking to her on Monday. I said, something is amiss. I may need to change your time. I don't know if I can find a later time for you. I thought noon would let you have luxurious sleep in the morning. And she said, I have trouble sleeping. I've always had trouble sleeping. I said, oh, I hadn't heard this before. The change in schedule brought it to my attention. She said, I'm really sorry I've been unreliable. I'm glad you've been able to give me some makeup sessions, but I typically stay up till about 5 o'clock in the morning. I draw. She's an art major. I draw. I send text messages to my friends. I know they're not going to read them. Well, there's some in Iceland, so they get the text messages at a time when they'll respond. Uh, but I try and keep myself busy when I know that dawn is coming soon. Then I begin to be able to sleep more easily. And I said, "What is causing your sleep disturbance? Is there a physiological reason?" She said, "Well, I have a congenital deficit. I was born without a thyroid, and I have to take thyroxine all the time, and it's really hard to regulate the dosage and keep it at some level where it's helpful to me. I think that may be contributing to it. I have to change doses depending on what's happening to my estrogen levels when I menstruate. And that knocks off my progesterone levels too. It's very complicated, and I'm not always on top of it. And I'm not always to smooth out my life properly, and I think that's contributing. But the nighttime has always been very threatening and frightening to me. Why is that? Well, I've told you this on occasion. My older brother molested me frequently. So he used to come into my bedroom in the night, and he's not living there anymore. I know it's not rational, but the nights became very dangerous. I never know when I would be awakened and he'd be on me and putting his hand over my mouth and doing what he was doing to me or not. And I'm just scared all the time. And I said, I'm so sorry. And for some reason, I said, I'm sorry you're not still a little girl. I told her my wife invented something that's very helpful for working with small children who are having trouble sleeping. And I'm sorry you grew up because you're on your own and lonely now and having to soothe yourself and take responsibility for yourself. I would love to do what my wife used to do for her clients, and I learned to do occasionally for one of mine. And the young woman said to me, "Well, what did your wife do?" And just as I've described to you now what my wife did, I described to her what my wife used to do with a protector animal. And my client, who's 24 years old, started sobbing. And she said in a very plaintive voice, "I wish you would still do it for me, even though I'm 24 years old." And I started crying. It was a very powerful shared experience we had. And damn it, she is currently looking for the protector animals. She's going through online places that sell animals. And next week, when I see her next, I am going to do with a 24-year-old woman exactly what I have told you used to be done with small children. And then if that were not miraculous enough, I have a graduate student I supervise. So I'm telling the story to the graduate student as an example of strange things that come up in my life and strange ways we might learn to relate to people that are not written about in the literature at all, and no research has been done on them whatsoever. And my graduate student starts crying. And I said, "Oh, this is upsetting you." She said, "Well, I haven't told you this, but I was raped when I was 16, and the night feels very dangerous to me too." And she said to me plaintively, "Would you do this for me?" Number two, she's 29 years old and she wants me to do this with her. So I said, Yes, if you're asking, why not? I will do this for you." So she's looking for a protector animal now too. And I'm just shaking my head. I just don't understand any of it, but I will participate in all of it. So let me pause there because I'm going to change to an entirely different topic for the rest of this session. And please come back out of silence and have any observations and comments made that you would like to make.
Well, now that you've become the protector animal whisperer,
Yes.
it seems like that this is a quite common that there are clients in their 20s or maybe even older that could use some type of I don't know.
It's a magic talisman of some kind to keep them safe in the night.
So
It reminds
something,
me, yeah.
it's almost like a blessing that you're
Yeah.
providing for them,
Yes.
It
to keep
reminds
them
me of,
safe.
yeah, there's an ancient Jewish tradition of making the golem from clay and dirt. You'd make a protector and imbibe it with special powers.
Yeah, but
It-
don't you just do that for small children? Or should every house have one?
I don't know.
it depends on whether the adult feels protected or not. If the adult doesn't feel protected, even as an adult, then why not?
Well, we were never taught to do things like this. It feels, yeah. I think in our group this week, I said, in order to do this, it requires from both participants, both the person doing the magic training and the one who's going to have the animal, it requires what the critics call the willing suspension of disbelief. You're living on two levels. You're living on the level of knowing all this is just colorful nonsense and maybe beautiful, but it's colorful nonsense. And yet, on some level, other level, it has to be sacred. It has to be powerful. It has to be real.
Mhm.
Does not the therapist also provide that too in the therapy office? A sense of protection, a sense of you know safety
Yeah,
for the
that's
client.
true. That's
Yeah,
true. I'm on duty. I try and create a sense that the office the client comes to is a sanctuary. That it's safe to be real. It's safe to visit with anything. No harm will take place of any kind in the office. Yes. But I'm not there. I'm doing something with this client and I'm giving an object to take home. And it's the object that's going to be there that I've trained in some way and given magic to. And the magic's going to radiate out of the object when they're not in the office with me. And somehow that's going to settle in over them and protect them.
But the object is extended by you
Yes,
as the therapist. And
that's
so,
correct.
yeah, it's symbolic of kind of like, what you're doing, what you're providing for that client.
I can think of other connections and metaphors. I remember there were times when one or another of our dogs would have to go into surgery and then be in the hospital overnight or even for 2 days or so. And the vet would always say, "Do you have a t-shirt that you've worn recently? Put the t-shirt in the cage with them so they can smell your scent." And even dogs can benefit from having some kind of transition comfort object at times of great stress. So that just occurred to me too. Maybe vets are smarter than therapists.
Probably.
Well, in some ways, you see children always bringing their favorite doll
That's
or
right.
on trips,
Yes. Or they bring their blankie with them to kindergarten the first day.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the theory behind this, that the child does not have a sufficient transition object that provides security and a feeling of comfort if they cling to it or have it by their side or with them. So you have
Mhm.
to create one. Something went wrong in the house, so the touch of a special pacifier, a blankie, a special. It often is a special stuffed animal already
Yes.
in the
Mhm.
household,
Mhm.
and this child comes from a household where that didn't come to fruition. So now one has to be intruded upon. Oh, I'm beginning to feel safer. If the board of psychology ever came after me for this ridiculousness I'm doing, I could come up with some theoretical rationale for why it's important to do it. I could talk psychobabble very well now. This is very helpful to me. Wonder of wonders. I'd forgotten about our dogs. Yeah, and even part of the ritual is that the breath of the therapist is infused all over the critter.
Yeah, you breathe life into it. It's an old story.
Yeah. All right. If there are no further comments about that, oh, this has been delicious. Thank you guys for listening and for my being able to talk about this and go revisit what it's all about. And it's so precious, such an important thing to be able to do. I'm now going to go to an entirely different topic. What is psychology and what are we doing? And I'm going to do it in a very scholarly fashion, which I hate. I have been in some ways a scholar. I've written many papers and I can talk psychobabble. I do not enjoy doing it, but I will do it when it's for good purpose. And I am going to share some very precious psychobabble with you. This is psychobabble written by a man who I much admire. His name is Paul Wachtel, Wachtel. He is a psychologist who wound up going to an analytic institute and was trained as a very traditional psychoanalyst in New York. And he identifies himself now uh, as a psychoanalyst. That's the first level of his identity. He will acknowledge he's a psychologist, but if anybody asks him what's his career, he will say he's a psychoanalyst. That's his identity. He happened to marry a child and family therapist somewhere along the line, and they started talking to each other about cases at the dinner table, as you might expect they would. And he became impressed that she had a way of looking at things and thinking about things that was different than his, but he saw the power in what she was talking about. She was on to many things and interested in struggling with many kind of knots that were not even talked about in the Analytic Institute or didn't enter any of the theories. And he decided he would write a book with her if he could, trying to meld and merge family therapy and psychoanalysis into something, some unified kind of way of thinking about human beings. And he did write the book with her. And then he went on. He and several other colleagues around the country have founded what is called the Society for the Exploration of Psychotherapy Integration, SEPI. It has about 1,000 members. I am a member. I pay the yearly dues. Uh, the this interdisciplinary group, it's a group of social workers, psychologists, marriage and family counselors, psychoanalysts, psychiatrists. They're all searching. They're searching like the inhabitants of the Tower of Babel, or to use a different metaphor, like the blind man who's groping the elephant. And each of those parts of us, including all the splinters within psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, somatic therapies, all the crazy stuff we psychologists have spun off. The attempt of SEPI is to treat the whole elephant, to begin to develop finally a unified theory of everything, where all the bits of wisdom, like this elephant has a sick toenail and you have to fix this toenail. I know that that's the important part of the elephant because when I touch the toenail, the elephant yells. And we have to treat the whole elephant and not just the sick toenail. And so SEPI is devoted to trying to develop a unified field theory. Uh, this is important. I don't know how much the rest of you know about theoretical physics, but that is the holy grail of theoretical physics right now, the unified field theory. There's a big trouble with linking the theory of uncertainty with the theory of relativity. One explains certain kinds of things in the universe, and the other one explains other things, and neither one of them explains some things, and they're in contradiction with each other. So theoretical physicists are trying to find the theory of everything, including what will account for black holes, what will account for alternative universes, all kinds of things that are dangling out there, black matter, the whole list of things that are not being explained at all well by what are the theoretical structure the physicists have. And my God, we're hundreds of years behind them. We're even an idiotville compared to what they're struggling with. Uh, Unfortunately, other than the members of SEPI who joined SEPI, all the other people, the cognitive behavioral therapists, the psychiatrists dispensing meds, everybody else believes they have the holy grail. And all the rest of what other people are doing are either meaningless or horseshit. And that is causing great trouble. So I am a great, great fond believer in the integrative movement that Paul Wachtel is one of the leaders in starting. And I wish him all success. I wish him a long life, and I will do whatever I can to facilitate the unfolding of what I'm talking about. If we are to be truly a science, and I think we are a strange collection, we are both a science and an art. I'll take that back. We are an art that can be studied scientifically. And uh, all of that depends upon moving forward with the movement that he's a major part of. So I have not liked what has happened to my profession. I thought when I was a young man in my 30s and 40s that we were on the path to importance, to a significant role in our culture, being significant influencers of national policy, and our profession was expanding and becoming more recognized and more powerful, and I was helping to do that. And I felt proud of that. I put in a lot of volunteer time trying to make that movement run forward. From the beginning of trying to get us licensing privileges, to, that's certainly a sign of social acceptance when the state decides to license the practitioners or something. The second step was to be included in insurance reimbursement policies. The third step was to have the training of practitioners in the discipline honored by the academics in the discipline and by the power structure in the discipline. There was a series of steps that seemed to be unfolding. And at some point, Hermann Hesse's novel occurs to me, the one called The Journey to the East. In The Journey to the East, the protagonist, in this case, it was me, the protagonist, was on the journey to the East. And it was a literal journey. It was a journey that started with people gathering on the Channel coast in France and moving steadily eastward through Europe. And they were going to go through Europe, they were going to cross the Middle East, and they would go up to the Himalayas finally, and they would reach whatever were the sources of enlightenment that had produced the Buddha. So this was a journey to the east to find the well springs of enlightenment in the novel. And the protagonist, I forgot what his trade was. I don't know. He may have been a professor. I don't know. I think he was a writer. And on this journey, in the journey to the east, there were a variety of characters. There were people that Hesse esteemed. They were actual politicians, policymakers, writers. He put real characters in. So and so, the former king of Albania was one of the people on the trip, or the man who discovered the vaccine for smallpox. He was one of the characters on the trip. So there were real life people who had lived at one time. And there were characters from fiction who were on the trip. Buddha was on the trip, trying to lead them on to where his homeland had been. So the story starts with being around the campfire. There were a bunch of people helping them, the equivalent of Sherpas and cooks who were setting up tents for them at night and cooking their meals. And around the campfires in the evening, there would be wonderful discussions of this, that, or the other thing. And the early pages are sprinkled with some of the discussions of what is wisdom, what is enlightenment. Hesse struggles with these things in the discussions that various characters are having with each other. And then one morning, he's had a good night's sleep. He gets up and goes outside the tent, and there's nobody there. Nobody's there. Everybody's gone. The empty tents are there. The personnel who have staffed the tents have gone. The tents have not been struck and folded up. The tents are just standing empty. And he's somewhere in Western France. And they're out in the countryside. He doesn't know where he is because he had other people who were the guides. And he doesn't know how he's going to survive or what's to become of him. His luggage is gone. Everything is gone. So he sees there's some trails and then some roads. He makes his way into the nearest village, and he decides he's going to go into the nearest church. I forgot what denomination it is. And he tells the spiritual leader of the church that he's been on the journey to the east, and the journey seems to have gone off without him. And he doesn't know how to get back or how to get connected with them or what to do with them. And the spiritual leader says, stay here for a while. I'll feed you. Maybe we can figure it out. And they start to have conversations with each other. What was the purpose of the journey? What did you learn so far? Who most impressed you? He interviews the protagonist about what was the learning so far in the early parts of the journey. What were there disappointments with the journey? Were there problems with the journey? And on and on. And several chapters in, a sickening thought occurs to the protagonist. The journey had not left him. He had left the journey. They had gone on without him because he had left. he had lost his nerve, or he no longer was interested, or he thought the journey was the wrong thing to be doing, but for whatever reasons, he had absented himself from the journey. And now the challenge was, what is he to do with his life? The purpose of his life has been taken away. So clearly, he was going to spend months, even years, reaching that enlightenment he was striving for. And now it was all gone. And his mentor said to him, I will be here, like being at the there, I will be here while you descend into yourself and try to see who you are and what you need to do. You can just stay here, I'll feed you and you'll be safe until you come up with the answer to your own riddle. Where are you going and what's to become of you and how do you get there? And if you need some money to send you on the new way, we'll have a fundraiser at the church for you so we can send you on your new way. And that's where the novel ends. So I had been on my own journey to East, all these wonderful things, helping to empower, create and empower and bring into being clinical psychology as a discipline, even founding a professional school, teaching courses, writing things, participating in the political processes of the association. And suddenly, it wasn't working. I was getting increasingly alarmed. In addition, well, I'll read you something. In addition, I had wound up being fired as the dean of the new professional school. So I was certainly amputated from that as one of the sustaining parts of my journey. And what was even worse, I was now watching where the journey was going. I could still see the transit of the journey across the landscape, and it was going increasingly in directions I couldn't stand, I thought were wrong-headed, would be destructive to our clients, and needed to be stopped if I could do anything to stop it. So I am going to start reading something that I wrote in a moment of despair, and attached to it is an article by Paul Wachtel that I found very moving. It's a little bit pedantic and too scholarly for my taste. Nevertheless, it contains wonderful observations. So here I go in the time remaining, and I probably won't get finished. I forgot the date that I wrote this in. Oh, I can figure it out. It's the 37th. It was an open letter from me to the members of the faculty of the campus I had founded. So I said in the first sentence, this academic year is the 37th consecutive year in which I have been in front of at least one class of students at the California School of Professional Psychology. So the school was founded in 71. So that was obviously 2008 that I wrote this. I am the only founding member of this campus community who remains in residence. Everybody else who came to get the place started had drifted away by then. For the most part, I have chosen to live in the background. I have stayed away over all the years for taking any opportunity to make some observations to you with whom I share this place, and have not attempted to influence the ongoing evolution of the programs here. But I want to become more visible today. For the year before the campus opened, 1969, and for the first 7 years of the program's existence, I was charged with being its leader, the chief architect of what we were to become, and a founder of the National Council of Schools and Programs in Professional Psychology, the organization that came into being as the professional school movement in our field exploded. Those were years in which I both wrote and spoke extensively to the faculty, to our students, to the psychological community, and to the profession at large about what psychology was and how it ought to develop, and how CSPP was to articulate with all of that. During the years of my leadership, this campus and its at first untried programs received their approvals from the California State Department of Education, received full regional accreditation from the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, and provisional approval from the American Psychological Association. Had succeeded in becoming, being significant, and being accepted. I was then assassinated, outmaneuvered, and pressured into surrendering my post in what was a second round of jarring and contentious organizational transformations of this school, its structure, and its leadership that marked the tumultuous first decade or so of our existence. I bowed quietly to the overwhelmingly superior forces, having by then exhausted almost all of my political capital in the first several years and without sufficient allies or defenders. I made an assessment, left my post, attended to my wounds, fell silent, made no further attempt to have any continuing impact on this program, and I have contented myself over the years with the privilege of maintaining my connections with the oncoming generations of students as an adjunct professor, remaining embedded in my practice of psychology, and continuing to pursue a variety of significant volunteer and elected posts in the American Psychological Association, where I remained in great demand. This week, I decided to end my silence for reasons I will share with you in time. My former and present students of mine know how much I have hated and scorned my sense of what my precious profession is mindlessly becoming. The transformations are partly my doing, and I feel the great oppression of personal guilt for having prodded professional psychology, particularly its subdivision that is now labeled clinical psychology, into embracing what, from my perspective, is proving to be a toxic identity and a failed mission. To review history briefly, in the late 1950s and on into the 60s, for the first time, large numbers of applied psychologists whose educational careers and numbers of waiting jobs have been financed by the federal government, poured out of the nation's universities and into the VA, clinics, hospitals, mental health inpatient and outpatient settings, and yes, even into independent practice. And the tide is still flowing. Most of us who were the early entrants received our skill training in some kind of medical setting, and most of us had as their conceptual models of what troubled the lives of our clients we were to serve some map created by those who believed in, quote, mental health and illness, and, quote, in psychopathology, unquote. Most attempted to label the distress they viewed with the Diagnostic Statistic Manual #1 of the American Psychiatric Association, and soon thereafter with the DSM-2. I really do not think that these textures have altered a great deal over the past 50 years. It appeared to those of us who found ourselves in leadership positions of the new and emerging profession in the 50s and 60s, as this wave of fresh doctorates continued to roll out in exponentially increasing numbers and to seek places in the fabric of society, that the future of the profession depended without question on all of us drawing ever closer to the dimensions and prerogatives of medicine in our own models and activities. And even more importantly, to attach ourselves to existing funding mechanisms available within society organized to pay for medical services, health insurance reimbursements, and payments for health care available under a variety of publicly financed programs. Failing to do so, we believe, would result in the regression of the profession and in its inability to have and to become accepted by the public. Since then, we have fought first for licensing legislation, then for inclusion in Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance reimbursement provisions, then for hospital privileges, and now for prescribing privileges. We have made the DSM-4 our Bible. As early as 1964, we formally declared ourselves to be, quote, a health service profession, unquote. And presently, our leadership is preparing to seek that psychologists be recognized as a form of, quote, primary care physicians, close quote, and want us to be included as such in hospital staffing and in HMO structures. And doing my volunteer work for APA and in helping to shape its lobbying and policy initiatives, I am ashamed to acknowledge that on into the early 1980s, I was one of the prime architects of this ongoing madness. Indeed, I remember a long-range planning meeting in Washington in 1988 when I had an inspiration. And I said, I think we could expand our opportunities if we could secure permission to prescribe psychoactive medications. It's not rocket science. There's no reason that psychologists couldn't master the necessary relevant areas of biology, anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology, as well as even better than physicians, close quotes. I will never forgive myself for that comment. Freud, in his monograph, The Ego and the Id, has a little section devoted to, quote, those who are wrecked by success, close quotes. I think the profession of psychology, often from this perspective, when I review the journey we have made and what has become of us. Psychology means the study of souls, but we have lost our souls. The ever quickening pace of the medicalization and mechanization of the profession has been driven by three dynamics: the public and our profession's naive commitment to the reductionist fallacy, a belief that troubled human experience and behavior need somehow to be addressed at the level of genetics and neurobiology. Two, the enormous capitalist greed and corporate profits that can be garnered by this view, as shared alike by big pharmaceutical companies and the leadership of the nation's HMOs. And three, playing out of old and ongoing tensions between psychology's scientists and its practitioners. The former have always held contempt for the activities of the latter and have believed that unless we who practice rooted our practices firmly in what they label as, quote, empirically validated, unquote, intervention strategies, then we were nothing short of conducting ourselves as charlatans. In the current capitalist landscape, with its yearning to contain healthcare costs so that corporate profits could rise even higher, the desire to limit healthcare only to that which is, quote, empirically validated, close quotes, spills over into the practice of psychology as well as that of medicine, and thus advantages a subset of our scientific colleagues. The latter, who do research, have always bought into the reductionist fallacies and now use as the best tactics for putting the seal of approval on various intervention strategies the double-blind research design. This is the design adopted for bringing drugs to market and is, to use the words of our psychologist scientists, the gold standard for evaluating effectiveness. Other forms of gathering and evaluating information about what we do are valued far, far less, including the rich years of research on the non-specific factors of any therapy, the nature of the therapist-client relationship, and the importance of empathic connectedness and the working alliance. I am saddened that our campus curriculum now contains a course on, quote, empirically validated treatment, close quotes. I understand the political necessity for the campus to do so, but I see this as another movement along a track that has increasingly made me ashamed to be a psychologist. What are we becoming? We are losing the capacity to relate to our clients on a human level, person to person. We trivialize them. We engage them from a subject-object disconnection, which interferes with what Martin Buber described as the I-thou dialogue, so essential to healing. We diagnose them and attempt to reduce symptoms. We believe almost everyone should be evaluated for possible psychopharmacological interventions. We treat the stream of our experiencing in the therapy session as if it were dangerous. You have to keep your countertransference in check. rather than the richest possible source of inspiration about the nature of the troubles of the person with whom we sit and about the conversations we might have with that person that could promote healing. We use the DSM-4 labels to stigmatize and dehumanize clients. I'm going to see my borderline at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and to organize our trivial research studies. And if you add into that bad mix the evil we do to ourselves and our clients in the name of risk management at the behest of our malpractice insurance carriers, then we are succeeding in murdering most of the humanity that by right needs to be alive in the consulting room. We have even taught our students to believe that it is unethical ever to hug or even to touch a client, for example, and it is probably unethical, quote, a boundary violation, to engage in the most trivial form of therapist self-disclosure. Empirical data about the possible importance of such things in fostering the therapeutic alliance, to the contrary, notwithstanding. These developments, which are esteemed as representing the best in the ongoing march of the profession, have left me feeling ashamed to be a psychologist. I'm brooding about seeking an adult education credential from the state of California's Department of Education, thereby altering my professional identity while still permitting me legally to offer services to the public under an entirely different rubric. I will become an adult education consultant. I can do that with a license from the State Department of Education and forget about my license from the Board of Psychology. This after 49 years of independent practice. And I will stop at my tirade at that point.
Well, here. Now you know why there's this rise in life coaching.
Yep.
I find more and more of the things I do are more in line with that than the desire to diagnose or pathologize what I'm seeing in my office.
I'm still heartsick. I get enraged and heartsick as I read this. I sent this out, 13 years ago. I said this, distributed this to the faculty, and things are only getting worse.
What was the reaction when you sent that or when you presented that, Arthur?
You're a wise man. Take a guess.
You were greeted with open arms and
Not a single person responded to me. That used to happen to me at APA too. I would make impassioned speeches about where we were headed and suggest policy assertions we needed to make, ways we should change our lobbying, things we should do to change our position in the medical establishment. And I would be looked at with rolling eyes. And when I would go to the restroom, I would hear people gossiping about me, saying, "There he goes again. He can't get off that horse. What the hell is he talking about? We have to listen to that shit again."
So I'm hoping in the second half of your talk here, you can provide some predictions for the future.
Oh, I'll be glad to.
you might not like him though.
No, I don't think I have bad predictions. I believe that we are kind people, decent people, thoughtful people. We have our proportion of idiots and slobs, but for the most part, they're lovely people in the profession, and we will find our way out of darkness and towards the light. It may be in the way Aaron mentions. We will give up calling ourselves psychologists and become coaches, although I'm not sure that's a good title. One of my former students at age 65 is moving to another state. This will be my final story. She's in Arizona right now, and she's licensed both in Arizona and Hawaii, where she had been working for the VA earlier. And their life is moving on. She remarried later in life. How wonderful. She has a nice husband she's been married to now. And it looks like she would be better off. She wants to move closer to her son because she's now 65. Their stepfather is 70, and she will just feel safer and better in the world to move. So they're going to move to Texas, and the cost of living is less expensive in a small town in Texas than it is in Arizona. So they have a nice new house they're getting, and she has been trying to get licensed by the Board of Psychology in Texas. And she is jumping through crazy hoops and not getting any response. She has been trying for 8 months unsuccessfully, even to find out what test she has to take or to take the test. And she is fed up, and she doesn't like, again, she doesn't like what psychology has become. She has coined a title for herself. She is a life transition coach. No, she's a life transition consultant. She likes consultant better than coach. And she's going to have business cards made with herself as a life transition consultant, and she's going to seek referrals, and that's what her new career is going to be. And that's the label for her new career. And she's going to surrender and not be a licensed psychologist anymore.
I see.
Yeah, I like it. Sounds good.
Takes a lot of courage to do something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, she's a past president of the Division of Independent Practice of the American Psychological Association. She's giving up seeing herself as a psychologist in independent practice. God, I think of the wave of immigrants who had to give up what was familiar to them and come to unfamiliar places in the new land. And maybe one by one, that's what we'll be having to do. All right, I'll say goodbye to you for today, and I will go for a nice walk with my wife and thank her again for formulating how to create a trouble animal.